The radio in my car turned on by itself at exactly 2:34 a.m. I hadn't touched it. The road was empty, stretching endlessly through the fog, and my phone had no signal. At first, it was only static, soft, rhythmic, almost calming. Then a voice broke through, low and distorted, repeating the same sentence over and over. "If you can hear this, don't stop driving." I told myself it was a late-night broadcast glitch, but the voice knew too much. It described the road ahead before I reached it. It warned me about turns seconds before they appeared. My hands tightened on the steering wheel as the fog grew thicker, swallowing the headlights. The radio crackled again, and this time the voice sounded afraid. It said the message wasn't meant for me. It was meant to keep something behind me. I checked the rearview mirror. At first, there was nothing. Then I noticed the darkness wasn't moving the same way the road was.
The door appeared at the end of my hallway sometime after midnight. I know this because I walked past that wall every day, and there had never been a door there before. It was old, wooden, and slightly scratched, with a brass handle that looked worn from use. I stood staring at it for a long time, trying to convince myself I was tired, until I noticed something worse. The door was breathing. Every few seconds, it expanded and contracted, almost imperceptibly, like a chest rising with breath. The air around it smelled damp and cold. I reached out and touched the handle. It was warm. From the other side came a soft knocking, slow and patient, as if whatever was inside knew I was standing there. I stepped back, my heart racing, and the knocking stopped. That night, I dreamed of the door opening. I dreamed of a dark room filled with voices repeating my name, learning how to say it properly.
It happened on a night when the power went out across the entire block. The streetlights died at once, leaving the road drowned in darkness. As I walked home, I noticed something wrong under the pale moonlight. My shadow was gone. Every step I took, the ground behind me stayed empty, as if the light refused to acknowledge my existence. I tried to ignore it, telling myself the angle was wrong, the clouds too thick, but when I reached my apartment I saw shadows everywhere, under furniture, along the walls, stretching from corners where nothing stood. They moved slightly, adjusting themselves as if making room for something missing. I locked the door and turned on a candle. The flame flickered, but still no shadow followed me. I realized then that shadows weren't just absence of light, they were places where something waited. When the power returned in the morning, I stood in front of the mirror, heart pounding, and flipped on the light. It smiled when I didn't.
I checked the time for the 5th time that night. It was still 1:59 a.m. The house was silent, not the peaceful kind, but the kind that presses against your ears until you start hearing things that aren't there. I tried sleeping, scrolling my phone, even turning on the lights, but nothing changed. The night felt stuck, like it was waiting for something to happen. That's when I noticed the sounds. A chair scraping softly in the living room. Slow footsteps moving without urgency. Someone humming a tune I half recognized. I told myself it was my imagination until I heard the footsteps stop outside my bedroom door. The handle didn't turn. Whoever it was just stood there, breathing calmly as if they had all the time in the world. I finally opened the door. Every single one of them was me. Frozen at different ages, smiling like they knew something I didn't.
The footsteps began the night I moved back into my childhood home. They came from upstairs, slow and deliberate, pacing from one end of the hallway to the other. I stood at the bottom of the stairs listening. The moment I held my breath, the footsteps stopped. When I breathed again, they resumed, perfectly in rhythm with my lungs. I tested it. I inhaled deeply. Silence. I exhaled. One step, another. Whatever was upstairs wasn't walking. It was listening. My chest burned as I tried to stay still, but the need to breathe always won. Each breath brought the footsteps closer to the stairs, closer to me. I locked myself in my old bedroom, pressing a pillow over my mouth to quiet my breathing. The footsteps reached the door and stopped. Then something scratched lightly against the wood, tracing my name with careful patience. I didn't scream. I didn't move.
I noticed the writing on the ceiling when I turned off the lights. At first, it looked like cracks in the paint, thin and uneven, stretching above my bed. But as my eyes adjusted to the darkness, the cracks began to form letters. My name, spelled perfectly. I sat up slowly, my heart pounding, convinced it was a trick of the shadows. The next night, the name was still there, but longer. A sentence had formed around it, written in something darker than the ceiling itself. You left me here. I tried scrubbing it off in the morning, but the ceiling was clean, smooth, untouched. No marks, no paint damage. Yet every night, the words returned, growing closer to the edge above my face. Soon I started waking up to the sound of scratching above me. Not in the walls, not in the attic, on the ceiling itself. The letters grew deeper, carved with intention. I recognized the handwriting. The spare room in my house had always felt unnecessary, like a space waiting for a purpose it never got. One night, while walking past it, I noticed the light was on. I was certain I'd turned it off earlier. When I stepped inside, the room looked normal, except it was arranged exactly like my bedroom. Same bed, same desk, same mess, even the same faint smell of detergent. The next morning, I woke up exhausted, as if I hadn't slept at all. Passing the spare room, I heard movement. Inside, someone was waking up too. Me. The version of me in that room sat up slowly, rubbing its eyes, moving a second after I did. Panic hit me as I realized the room wasn't copying my space. It was copying my actions. Each day, the delay grew shorter. The other me started moving first. It brushed its teeth before I did.
Every night at exactly 11:58 p.m., the lights in my house turned off by themselves. Every room, every lamp, all at once. 2 minutes later, at midnight, they came back on, except one. The light in the hallway stayed dark. I told myself it was faulty wiring, until I noticed the hallway light switch was always warm, as if someone had just touched it. I tried staying awake to watch it. When the house went dark, I stood in the living room, heart pounding, staring down the black hallway. The darkness there felt thicker than the rest, like it had weight. I heard slow footsteps moving inside it, careful not to step into the light. When midnight came, every room brightened except that hallway. Something didn't want to be seen. The next night, the darkness crept closer. When the lights returned, the hallway was still dark, but now the shadow reached into the living room. I could feel cold fingers brush my ankle.
I noticed the mirror near the emergency exit on the 13th floor because it wasn't there yesterday. The building manager insisted it had always been there, placed for safety reasons, but I knew every corner of that floor. That mirror was new. When I passed it, my reflection looked normal, tired eyes, stiff shoulders, until I took one more step and saw the reflection hadn't followed. I stopped walking. My reflection kept moving, turning its head slowly to look back at me. Its smile was wrong, too wide, too patient. I blinked and everything snapped back into place. I laughed nervously and walked away, but the feeling stayed with me, crawling under my skin. That night I dreamed of standing in front of the mirror while something else walked away wearing my face. Over the next few days, the mirror began appearing in different emergency exits, always on the floor I was on, always clean, always waiting.
I knew something was wrong the moment I got into bed. The sheets were warm, not from the room, not from the heater, but the exact warmth of a body that had just been there. I stood frozen beside the mattress, listening. The house was silent, no footsteps, no doors, no sound except my own breathing, which suddenly felt too loud. I told myself I had just forgotten to turn off the electric blanket, even though I didn't own one. I pulled the sheets back and checked. Nothing. The warmth slowly faded, like something leaving. That night, I slept on the couch, telling myself I'd laugh about it in the morning. I didn't. The next night, the bed was warm again, this time on my side. The pillow had an indent, fresh and deep, like a head had been resting there, waiting. I felt watched, not from the corners or the doorway, but from right beside me. The air smelled faintly of breath. I didn't turn around.
No app icon, no sound, just a blank banner that said, "Don't unlock the screen." I stared at it for a long time, my thumb hovering, convinced it was some kind of glitch. When the screen dimmed, the notification refreshed itself, brighter this time, as if it knew I was still awake. More notifications followed, stacking one under another. "It can see you. Stay still. You already looked once." My heart hammered as I realized the messages were updating without the screen ever unlocking. The room felt tighter, the darkness heavier, like it was pressing inward. From the corner of my eye, I saw something shift, but I didn't dare turn my head. My phone vibrated again. "Do not open the camera." The warning came too late. The front-facing camera turned on by itself, the tiny green light glowing like an eye. I noticed the extra step on the staircase the night I came home late. I'd climbed those stairs for years, counting them without thinking. 16 steps, always 16. That night, there were 17. I laughed nervously, assuming I'd miscounted, but the feeling stayed with me, like the house was quietly watching my reaction. The next evening, there were 18 steps. I stopped halfway, my foot hovering in the air, my heart racing. The staircase looked normal, same wood, same railing, but the higher I climbed, the colder the air became. When I reached the top, I felt exhausted, like I'd walked much farther than I should have. I checked again the next morning, 16 steps, perfect. Waiting. Every night after that, the staircase added one more step. Each new step felt heavier than the last, pulling at my legs, slowing my breathing. Sometimes I heard movement above me, something adjusting itself, preparing.